Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shaista and I am a student of MSc class Zoology. The topic which discussed today is function of plasma membrane. First of all, function of plasma membrane include selective permeability, passive transport, active transport, simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, channel protein, carrier protein, filtration, endocytosis. There are three types of endocytosis: pinocytosis, phagocytosis, receptor mediated endocytosis. Selective permeability membrane. Plasma membrane are selective permeable, meaning that only certain molecules can pass through them. Water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide can easily travel through the membrane. Generally, ions, for example, sodium, potassium ions, and polar molecules cannot pass through the membrane. They must go through specific channels or pores in the membranes instead of freely diffusing through. This way, the membrane can control the rate at which certain molecules can enter and exit the cell. Membrane transport include passive transport and active transport. Passive transport is the type of membrane transport that does not require energy to move substances across cell membrane. It's a diagram of passive transport. Ions use passive transport when moving with the concentration gradient. Sodium and potassium ions use passive transport to move from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Next is passive transport. Passive transport include following terms: simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, osmosis. Facilitated diffusion are of two types: carrier protein, channel protein. Simple diffusion. In simple diffusion, transport across the membrane takes place without the help of any permease and occurs only in the direction of concentration gradient. During simple diffusion, a small molecule in aqueous solution dissolves into the phospholipid bilayer. In phospholipid has polar head and non-polar tail, crosses it and then dissolves into the aqueous solution on the opposite side. There is little specificity to the process. It's a diagram of simple diffusion. In this diagram, interstitial fluid is the outer part of cell membrane and the cytosol is the inner part of cell membrane. In interstitial fluid, oxygen molecules are in high concentration. So first of all, oxygen concentration move to the cytosol part of the cell membrane, and in cytosol part of cell membrane, carbon dioxide molecules are in higher concentration. So carbon dioxide molecules move to the interstitial fluid. Facilitated diffusion. In this type of passive transport, ions or molecules cross the membrane rapidly with the help of permease in the membrane. It occurs only according to concentration gradient and is very specific. Each facilitated diffusion protein transports only a single type of ion or molecule. Currently, it is believed that transport protein from the channels through the membrane that permit certain ions or molecules to pass across the membrane. For example, calcium channels occur in axonal membranes for the entrance of calcium in the cell, and glucose permease in the mammalian RBC facilitates the diffusion of glucose into the cell. It's a diagram of facilitated diffusion. Facilitated diffusion, channel mediated ions or small molecules move through a water filled channel. In this diagram, a protein channel, mostly specific to one type of ion, to pass through it. Carrier protein. Carrier protein, a molecule temporarily binds with a carrier protein in the plasma membrane. It is transported from an area of higher concentration to the area of lower concentration. It's a glucose in it's a diagram of carrier protein. In this diagram, carrier protein which alternate between two conformations like glucose transporter where binding glucose cause the change shape that once glucose is released to change back to its original conformations. Channel protein from water form water-filled pores across the membrane. These pores do not remain open continuously. They have specific gates open for short time and then closed. Calcium, sodium, potassium ions pass through these channels. It's the channel protein that remains open for transport of protein, yeah, sodium potassium ions. Active transport. In this process, ions or molecules move across the membrane against the concentration gradient using metabolic energy. It is done with specific transport proteins called pumps. For example, sodium potassium ATPase. It is an ion pump or cation exchange pump which is driven by energy of one ATP molecule to export 3 sodium outside the cell in exchange of the import of 2 potassium inside the cell. It's a diagram of active transport. Sodium and potassium ions use active transport when moving against the concentration gradient from an area of lower concentration to the area of higher concentration. There are two types of active transport: primary active transport and secondary active transport. In primary active transport, ATP-driven carrier are used in primary active transport. Secondary active transport is a type of active transport. The active transport in which ion driven carrier are used are called secondary active transport. Osmosis, the process by which the water molecules pass through a semi-permeable membrane from a region of higher water concentration to the region of lower water concentration, is known as osmosis. Filtration is a process that forces small molecules across selectively permeable membrane with the help of hydrostatic pressure is called filtration. Endocytosis, the bulk movement of material into the cell by formation of vesicles, is called endocytosis. Exocytosis, the removal of cell secretion from the cells by outfolding, is called exocytosis. There are three types of endocytosis in eukaryotes: pinocytosis, phagocytosis, receptor-mediated endocytosis. Pinocytosis, which is the non-specific uptake of small droplets of extracellular fluid by endocytosis vesicles. Receptor-mediated endocytosis, which is a specific endocytosis in which a receptor on the surface of the plasma membrane recognizes an extracellular macromolecule and binds with it. Phagocytosis, the uptake of solid particles by invagination, is called phagocytosis. It also forms vesicle called food vacuole. Lysosomes combine with food vacuole to form a phagolysosome.